welcome to today's deep dive. If you scroll through social media on any given winter day, you are almost guaranteed to see this very specific, highly curated aesthetic.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly the one you mean.
Right. It's like someone is wrapped in this chunky knit blanket. There's a steaming mug of tea resting on a stack of vintage books.
Always the vintage books.
Always. And a fire is crackling softly in the background, and the caption is usually just one single word, right? Hygge.
Yeah, it has really become this inescapable lifestyle brand. It gets marketed to us everywhere as this ultimate cure-all aesthetic for modern stress.
Totally.
Like you can buy the socks, the candles, the mugs, all of it promising to deliver this feeling.
Which is incredibly appealing, I'll admit. Like, I find myself completely drawn to that imagery when the weather gets cold.
I mean, who wouldn't be? It looks incredibly comfortable.
Exactly. But today, we are taking a deep dive to figure out what is actually operating behind that cozy imagery. We have a really fascinating stack of sources to unpack for you today, including the 2026 World Happiness Report, some brilliant anthropological research on social dynamics, and a few cultural articles, too.
It's a great lineup.
Yeah, and our mission today is to just strip away all the marketing fluff and get to the structural core of what Hygge really is.
Getting past that fluff is so necessary. Because there is this massive oversimplified narrative out there.
Yeah.
The media essentially claims that this cozy lifestyle is like the singular engine driving a nation's well-being.
Which sounds a bit too simple.
Way too simple. When you look at the actual structural data, that popular narrative turns out to be heavily distorted. It totally misses the much larger, far more complicated picture of what truly supports human well-being.
Well, before we jump into that national happiness data, we really need to understand what Danish people actually mean when they use this word.
Right, because it's not just a hashtag for them.
Exactly. So, looking at the article we have from AFAR magazine, the historical origins are pretty revealing. The concept of Hygge, which, for you listening, is roughly pronounced Hygge, it started popping up in the Danish language around the early 1800s.
But it has older roots, doesn't it?
It does. It actually derives from a much older Norwegian word, which is Hygge. And Hygge means to comfort.
To comfort. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and what really stood out to me is the linguistic connection to the English word hug.
Oh, wow. That etymology tells you almost everything you need to know about the psychological intention behind the word.
Right.
Because a physical hug implies wrapping something up. It's offering a barrier of comfort and security against whatever's happening outside of that embrace.
Which brings to mind a very specific visual. Like, instead of thinking of it as just a vague mood or some sepia filter you put on an Instagram photo,
Right.
I think it helps to visualize it as a physical boundary, like building a low-stimulation blanket fort against the outside world.
A blanket fort. I love that analogy.
Yeah, because when you're a kid, a blanket fort isn't just throwing some pillows together. It's about defining a protected space where the loud, chaotic rules of the rest of the house suddenly just don't apply.
You are totally insulated inside the fort.
Exactly.
And that captures the mechanics of it perfectly, because a fort requires deliberate construction and mutual agreement from everyone inside it.
It doesn't just happen by accident.
No, not at all. And that aligns seamlessly with the data we have from the Happiness Research Institute in Copenhagen.
Oh, right. I imagine they looked past the aesthetic into the actual behaviors, right? What did their surveys reveal?
So they surveyed Danish citizens to pinpoint what they actually tangibly associate with the concept in their daily lives.
And it wasn't just, like, abstract feelings.
Not at all. The results were incredibly concrete. They are deliberate, low-key, shared activities. When you ask Danes what creates this state, 3 specific activities completely dominate the responses.
Okay, what are the 3?
Lighting candles, playing board games, and having hot drinks.
Lighting candles, playing board games, and having hot drinks. That is highly specific.
Very specific and very focused on the immediate physical environment.
Right, like curating the space.
Exactly. They also frequently mention fireplaces, reading books, and eating sweets. But honestly, the most illuminating part of the survey is what ranked at the absolute bottom of the list.
Oh, the things that ruin the vibe.
Yes, the things Danes consider fundamentally unhygelig, and those are high-stimulation pursuits.
Like what?
Playing competitive sports, scrolling through social media, or playing intense computer games, those all rank at the very bottom.
Well, that tracks completely with the blanket fort idea.
Yeah.
I mean, high-stimulation activities breach the walls.
They really do.
Like, social media literally brings the whole chaotic, opinionated world right into your living room through your phone.
Yeah, and competitive sports introduce stress, adrenaline, high stakes.
So the core mechanism is about intentionally lowering those stakes.
Exactly. It's about unhurried togetherness, where no one is trying to prove anything, no one is competing for status.
And the sensory input, like the lighting and sound, is kept soft and manageable.
Precisely.
Okay, but if this blanket fort is so effective at keeping stress out, I can see why people make this massive leap in logic.
What do you mean?
Well, if Danes are constantly drinking hot tea and playing board games in these lovely low-stress environments, is this the reason the media always points to Denmark as the happiest country on Earth?
Okay, we need to clear up a massive myth right now.
Let's do it.
Because that assumption is built on entirely outdated information. Denmark is not the happiest country in the world.
Wait, really? Because you still see that headline constantly in lifestyle magazines.
It is a very stubborn media trope. But if we look directly at the 2026 World Happiness Report, which is this comprehensive study by the University of Oxford's Well-Being Research Center.
Along with Gallup and the UN.
Yes, exactly. According to their 2026 data, Finland actually ranks first.
Finland takes the top spot.
Yes, and they have held that position for 9 consecutive years.
9 years. Wow.
Yeah. Iceland is currently in second place, and Denmark is third.
Okay, that is a huge misconception to clear up for you listening. Denmark is third.
Right.
I mean, still, being in the top 3 globally is undeniably impressive. But when we talk about a happiness report, how are they actually measuring that?
That's a great question.
Because happiness feels like such a fleeting, subjective emotion to try and rank on a global scale.
It's vital to clarify what the statistic actually measures because the title of the report is a bit misleading.
How so?
Well, the World Happiness Report doesn't measure how often people smile or how many candles they buy or anything related to momentary joy.
Oh, okay.
What the report actually does is ask people in over 140 countries to evaluate their own current lives on a scale from 0 to 10.
Got it. So 0 represents the worst possible life they can imagine for themselves.
Exactly. And 10 represents the absolute best possible life.
So it's a self-evaluation metric. It's measuring long-term life satisfaction, not just whether you had a good afternoon with your tea.
Precisely. It's structural. And when researchers analyze why certain countries consistently score so highly on that 0 to 10 scale year after year,
They aren't pointing to candles.
no, they don't point to cultural coziness. They point to massive underlying structural factors.
Like what kind of factors?
We're talking about high income equality, comprehensive social support systems, and perhaps most importantly, incredibly high levels of systemic trust.
Trust.
Yes, trust does a huge amount of the heavy lifting when it comes to national well-being scores.
I want to break down that concept of trust for a second because it can sound a bit academic.
Sure.
What does systemic trust actually look like in the daily life of someone living in one of these Nordic countries?
Well, on a micro level, it looks like the baseline confidence that if you drop your wallet on a busy city street, a stranger is highly likely to pick it up and return it to you intact.
Wow. I mean, that fundamentally changes how you move through your day.
It really does.
Your baseline biological level of anxiety would just be much lower if you didn't view every stranger as a potential threat.
Exactly. And that low baseline of anxiety scales up to the institutional level, too.
How does that look institutionally?
Systemic trust is the profound peace of mind knowing that if you suddenly develop a serious illness, that diagnosis is not going to lead to financial ruin for your family.
Because the social safety net is designed to catch you.
Right. It's there by default.
It acts like a societal shock absorber. Like, if you don't have to carry around that invisible backpack of existential dread worrying about medical bankruptcy or sudden destitution.
Your baseline rating of your life is naturally going to be higher.
Exactly. You actually have this psychological bandwidth to relax.
You hit the nail on the head regarding the bandwidth to relax. These structural pillars, trust, equality, a strong safety net, they create the foundation.
Right.
To use your analogy, the social safety net builds the sturdy walls and roof of the house.
And Hygge is just how they choose to decorate the living room inside that sturdy house.
That is a perfect way to put it.
So to clarify this for you listening,
Yeah.
it is a cultural practice that is absolutely associated with well-being. But we cannot say that a cultural practice like this is the engine driving national happiness.
No, definitely not.
You can't just light a bunch of candles in a society suffering from massive income inequality and broken safety nets and expect everyone's life satisfaction to suddenly jump to a 10.
You certainly cannot budget cut your way out of providing social support and then try to bandage the resulting anxiety with cozy board games.
Right. That puts the whole lifestyle brand into sharp perspective.
It really does.
But it does raise a fascinating question. If this curated coziness isn't the primary engine of Danish happiness, what is its actual function in their society?
Now we're getting to the complex part.
Like, is this focus on unhurried togetherness universally positive? Or is there a shadow side to it?
There is absolutely a shadow side to it, and this is where the sociological data gets a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
For this perspective, we need to look at a peer-reviewed 2011 paper from the journal Social Analysis.
Great. What does it say?
Well, it was authored by a Danish anthropologist named Jeppe Troll Linnet, and he spent significant time studying the mechanics of this practice.
And he complicates this cozy picture.
Significantly.
I always appreciate a good academic critique that challenges the popular narrative. What does Linnet argue is actually happening?
Linnet argues that while this practice is obviously experienced by participants as a very pleasant, pleasurable form of togetherness,
Sure.
it also functions as a powerful, informal vehicle for social control.
Wait, social control?
Yes.
I struggle to see a downside here. Like, how can drinking hot cocoa and playing a cooperative board game act as a form of social control? That sounds almost contradictory.
I know, it sounds intense, but think about the underlying mechanics of that blanket fort you described earlier.
Okay.
Linnet's research shows that the practice establishes a very strict, unspoken hierarchy of acceptable attitudes.
Acceptable attitudes.
Right. It is inherently about withdrawing from the complexities, controversies, and conflicts of the outside world.
Right, keeping the outside out.
Which means if you introduce complexity or conflict into that space, you are violating the fundamental rules of the gathering.
Ah, I see where this is going. A fort only remains peaceful if everyone inside mutually agrees to suppress anything that might cause friction.
Exactly.
So if someone comes in and starts, loudly debating politics or venting about a really stressful situation at work, they are breaching the walls.
They are completely ruining the vibe.
Wow.
And Linnet points out that this required suppression can lead to negative stereotyping of social groups who are perceived as being unable to properly participate.
So it draws lines.
Very quiet, invisible lines around who belongs in the inner circle and who doesn't. And that often happens along class lines or based on cultural communication styles.
Let me test an analogy here, because it sounds a bit like an unspoken dress code at a very exclusive dinner party.
Oh, let's explore that. How so?
Okay, imagine you get invited to a dinner party. The invitation doesn't explicitly state a dress code. It just says, come as you are, good vibes only.
Right, very casual.
But when you arrive, you realize everyone is wearing, like, perfectly tailored, muted beige linen.
Of course they are.
They're speaking softly, they're sipping clear tea, and you have shown up in a loud, neon pink sequin suit, ready to talk passionately about a controversial news story.
You are going to disrupt the entire aesthetic of the room immediately.
Right. And the thing is, no one formally kicks you out.
No.
No one hands you a rule book and says you broke Section 4.
Yeah.
But there's this subtle collective chilling effect.
Yes, exactly.
People slowly turn away from you, conversations get quiet, the smiles get tight, and you realize you have completely disrupted their curated environment.
You're quietly shut out because you don't fit the mold.
Exactly. If the goal is keeping things light and manageable, then being loud or being controversial or just having a messy, complicated life makes you the person in the neon suit.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize the informal mechanism of exclusion. It really captures it.
It's kind of heavy, honestly.
It is, and what's really important to highlight for you listening here is the profound irony of this dynamic playing out where it does.
What makes it ironic in this specific context?
Well, Nordic cultures pride themselves heavily on their egalitarianism.
Right, the belief that everyone is fundamentally equal.
Exactly. Treating everyone with equal respect is a cornerstone of their societal structure and their politics.
Yeah?
Yet, as Linnet's research demonstrates, the strict cultural norms of what counts as an acceptable, cozy gathering actually end up creating negative stereotyping and social exclusion.
So it contradicts their own values in a way.
It does. It becomes a way for a very specific, often middle-class demographic to quietly assert dominance.
Wow.
If you come from a background with different cultural norms regarding how to express emotion or how to debate ideas or how to host guests, you might simply be deemed inappropriate for the space.
So the very tool used to create a feeling of absolute safety and belonging for those inside the circle is simultaneously acting as a wall to keep people with different norms outside the circle.
Yeah.
The blanket fort has a bouncer.
It absolutely has a bouncer, and because it's an invisible bouncer, it makes it incredibly difficult to challenge.
Right, because how do you fight that?
You can't easily argue with a rule of exclusion that no one in the room will even admit exists.
That completely shifts how I look at those perfectly styled winter social media posts.
I know, it ruins the innocence a bit.
It really does. It's not just a harmless aesthetic choice. It can be a highly regulated social performance.
Definitely.
Which makes me wonder, is this invisible bouncer phenomenon entirely unique to Denmark? Or is this the broader human mechanism that we are just attaching a Danish label to?
That's a great point. When we zoom out and look at neighboring countries, we find that this isn't just a Danish quirk at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the specific word we are discussing today is Danish, but remarkably similar concepts exist all across Northern Europe. This proves we're looking at a much broader regional cultural pattern.
What are some of the other terms used in the region?
Well, in Germany, they have a cultural concept called Gemütlichkeit.
Okay.
In the Netherlands, there is a very similar idea known as Gezelligheid. And in Sweden, they practice a concept called Majas.
So they all have their own version of this.
Exactly. While they all have their own unique local flavors, they all describe deeply related ideas of unhurried togetherness, coziness, and shared presence.
The desire to just, circle the wagons, dim the lights, and exist peacefully with your in-group seems to be a really widespread regional instinct.
It makes complete sense historically and geographically, too.
How so?
When a population has to endure long, dark, harsh winters for centuries, creating a warm, low-conflict inner sanctum isn't just about feeling good. It's practically a survival strategy.
Well, that's true.
It builds the social cohesion necessary to get through the dark months.
That makes a lot of sense. And despite the exclusionary flaws we just talked about, that invisible bouncer at the door, I was reading in our sources that the underlying principles of this practice are actually being studied for their positive applications far beyond Northern Europe.
Yeah, the research on practical applications is quite compelling, especially when you abstract the core mechanisms away from the strict cultural baggage.
I saw studies looking at how to apply these exact concepts in multicultural education settings.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right. Imagine a teacher trying to create a reading environment that feels safe for students from vastly different backgrounds. If you extract the core idea, which is creating a shared, unhurried space where the stakes are low and people are encouraged to just be present with one another, that has immense value in a classroom.
It really does. If an educator can consciously harness the psychological safety of togetherness while actively dismantling the unspoken dress code aspect, they have a very powerful tool for connection.
Exactly.
It really highlights that the human desire to feel safe, relaxed, and accepted in a group is universal.
So it's less about enforcing a rigid standard of behavior and more about being highly intentional about making sure the door to the fort stays wide open for everyone. A space where a student's loud enthusiasm isn't penalized as bad vibes, but is just integrated into the warmth of the room.
That is the ideal application. It's about taking the best, most nourishing parts of the practice. The intentional unplugging, the focus on shared physical experiences over digital screens, the lowering of competitive stakes.
And intentionally leaving behind the rigid social policing.
Precisely.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for you listening is that we need to completely drop the cliches.
Definitely drop the cliches.
This practice is not some magical cure-all for modern anxiety, and it is definitely not a shortcut to a perfect life that you can just buy at a high-end homeware store.
Far from it. It is a genuine, documented social practice of low-key togetherness. It's rooted in very physical comforts, like the candles, the hot drinks, and the board games that keep us present.
Right.
And it flourishes because it exists alongside massive structural benefits, like high societal trust and robust safety nets, which are what truly elevate national well-being scores.
But, as we've learned today, it is undeniably a double-edged sword. That perfectly curated coziness comes with unspoken rules that can easily exclude anyone who doesn't perfectly fit the required mold.
Exactly. It creates a deeply safe space, but it also creates a closed door.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to consider in our own daily lives.
Yes, it does.
We might not use the Danish word for it, but we all engage in these boundary-making behaviors to manage our stress.
We really do. So my question for you listening is this. If you were to strip away the literal candles and the board games, what unspoken rules of coziness or good vibes might you be using to draw boundaries around your own social circle?
Wow. That is a brilliant question to sit with.
Hmm.
Are your curated good vibes unintentionally keeping someone else out in the cold?
It's something to think about.
Something to really chew on next time you're pouring a hot cup of tea. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. It's been an absolute pleasure unpacking this with you. We'll catch you next time.